Making a simple bass line just to add some weight to your beat is relatively simple, but today I'm gonna share some tips on how I make expressive and powerful bass lines such as this one. But we're gonna go through some basics as well, so if you're looking to step up your bass game, you've come to the right place. So let's dig in. Now, obviously the bass line doesn't work in isolation. It's all about how it interacts with the other elements in your beat. So let's start with drums, a melodic riff, and a chord progression before I lay down the bass line and explain how and why it works. So I usually start with the drums simply because this allows me to get the best possible groove. I mean, in a band, everyone follows the drummer, and I know some people start with a sample or chords or melody, but every time I see someone do that, it kind of seems it steers them towards making drums that are just too straight, and groove is what makes the bass line exciting as well. It should work really well with the drums. So then I added this melodic riff with this East Asia string instrument, and I find this helps me a lot for getting the creative juices flowing as opposed to starting straight up with the chords. So this riff uses the scale of G minor, and we only need some chords before we can add the bass line. Now I've used this chord progression or variations of it in other beats I've shown here on the channel. And again, pay close attention to the chords because they determine what bass notes would work well. So the most basic way to go about it is to just play the root of the chord below each chord. So G below the first chord, D sharp, or maybe E flat is the more proper way to call it, below the second one, and D below the third one. And this can work for a bass line that has a supportive role, but for me, bass line is kind of the main part, so we have to do better. So let's first see what I actually came up with for this beat, and then I'll explain it. So below each chord, I'm playing the root note of that chord. But what are these other notes? These are just the other notes from the scale of G minor. Obviously, if all the other parts used G minor, then the bass line would be in G minor as well. First of all, even if you play just the root below each chord, make sure to experiment with different lengths of the notes to emphasize different parts of the groove. Second of all, pay attention to these filler notes that lead to the next chord change. These are what make the bass line more exciting, and you can use any note from the scale, but try the octave, so the same note as the root note, but an octave higher, or the fifth, which for G would be D, or the fourth, and that would be C. But again, you can experiment with all notes from the scale that you are using. So initially I recorded a 4-bar clip, but then I duplicated it and recorded a different phrase on the last 8th bar. And this one is running down the G minor scale. Oh, by the way, if you are enjoying the video or if it's helpful to you, you can do me a solid by hitting that like button down below. And if you aren't subscribed yet, you might as well do that. So adding some variation and making the phrase 8 bars is actually much better than 4 bars. Much more interesting to listen to. So at the end of each 8-bar section, I delete the last bar of the bass line and record a quick run up or down the G minor, in this case, scale. So this 8-bar phrase never repeats in the exact same way, which makes the transition to the next section much more impactful. And I have some super important things to consider to make your bass hit the right way, but let's first see what other parts I added to this beat. For example, the piano part was a bit too stiff, so I recorded a different version which was, again, based on the same chords. another thing to consider is paying attention to the octave. Notice that most, if not all notes are in this lower octave between D and the D above it. And you can play some higher notes here and there to add excitement and some sporadic lower ones, but this is where the bass line hits in a way that your speakers love. So lower notes are hard to reproduce for most speakers, and higher ones don't add this weight, and they also may interfere too much with the other elements. So make sure you're hitting this sweet range for your bass lines. And as for the patch itself, that would depend on the track. But for an energetic funk bass line, you want something that's not too hollow. It's fine if it's a smoother, softer sound than this one, but you don't want a simple sine wave. You need some harmonics, so something with a bit more mid-range, which is important for it to have that presence in the mix. And this allows it to cut through your other sounds and makes it easy to hear on smaller speakers. But most of the time you don't want it to be too sharp and thin either. It's all about the balance, and I don't really rely on the mixing stage for this. I prefer to get it right at the source. And this is a bass sound that I've made myself on the Micro Cork plugin that I like to use sometimes, and in most of my beats I use the bass patches from my recent pack Electric BAP for Ableton Live and Move. And most of the basses in that pack are made with this approach. But whatever bass patch you use, make sure it has this legato enabled, so the sharp part in the beginning doesn't re-trigger when you play overlapping notes. And if you want to try to make a similar patch yourself on the Micro Cork plugin, I have an older video where I show how to do that, and I will link it in the description down below. And another thing I like is to have vibrato on the mod wheel, which can make it so much more expressive when used to accent some notes. And the last thing about the patch, I tend to avoid these basses that are drenched in reverb and delay, and I like the bass to be as dry as possible, which makes it kind of more upfront and hitting harder. I have plenty of reverbs and delays on the melodic parts and chords anyway, and my mixes are usually quite busy, so leaving the bass dry helps me get a cleaner mix. Man, look, I explained everything as detailed as possible, and I really hope the tips I shared will help you. But the secret sauce that I can't teach you is to just find your own style and express yourself when you play these bass lines. It may sound cliche, but that's the most important part. So let's have a listen to the final track. If you want to add some thick and punchy bass sounds to your library, check out my Ableton Live packs from the link in the video description down below. Specifically the latest one, Electric BAP, or for the best value you can get the complete Heat bundle, which includes all packs. And getting the packs is also a great way to support what I do, so I can bring you more videos like this one. But a completely free way to help me out would be to just like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you later.